Hello, everybody. I am Ben Talsma from the Van Andel Institute for Education, here to talk about how to disagree without being disagreeable, an important topic in education because quite often we do have different perspectives, maybe even different interests, and we need to learn to navigate those situations. Quite often, some of those people come in with some hidden animosity. Maybe sometimes that animosity is not quite so hidden, and we need to figure out how to deal with that successfully. So you were promised 5 strategies that actually work. We're actually going to give you 18 different strategies. Now, everybody's a little bit different, so maybe you're going to walk away and say, hey, only 17 strategies were awesome, and one of them is not for me. That's fine. If you hear any ideas that you think just don't resonate in your situation, feel free to discard them. But my goal is that you walk away with some ideas you didn't already have when you showed up. Our agenda today is super simple. We're going to talk about the problem that we're facing, and we're going to talk about the solutions. That's it. Very simple. We're going to look at it through 3 lenses: student conflicts, staff conflicts, because that does exist in schools, and we're going to talk about community conflicts, disagreements with parents or other members of the community. Before we dive into the meat of things, I want to mention there will be a recording. So if you want to check any of this out at a later date or share it with all your friends, you can feel free to do that. There is a hyperdoc, which you should have access to in the chat box, that includes a link to all of the different resources and ideas that we're exploring today. And behind the scenes, if you do have any questions, you can feel free to chat to Robin. Robin, would you like to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful spring day.
She did. I was a little worried she didn't want to say hi to everybody, but she did in the final analysis. We are brought to you, we're sponsored today by Van Andel's Flex PD. I can say without hyperbole that this is the greatest professional development in the history of the world, in part because I helped to bring it to you. If you are interested in exploring these ideas or really any other ideas, we can be flexible. We can provide the content that you're looking for, the schedule that you're looking for. Just fire an email out to that guy right down there, that's me, and say, hey, we could use some of this PD, and we'll schedule a time to talk about it. Again, we will bend over backward to make sure that we meet your needs. If your school improvement plan says that we need this to be delivered by a Simpsons character or a Muppet, that's a weird school improvement plan, but we will make that happen. All right, with that out of the way, let's dive in and explore the problems and the solutions. So, to talk about the problem, I'm going to start off talking about fungi. There's a fungi right there. That fungi is called Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. I hope I'm mispronouncing that correctly. And I promise I am going somewhere with this, because what this fungus loves to do is it loves to infect ants. And when it infects those ants, it actually hijacks their mind. It controls their minds and turns them into zombie ants. It compels them to climb way up trees where it eats away at them until they die. And then since it's so high, it can burst out and spread its spores over a large area of the environment. So not a great outcome for the ants. And the point here is that this thing infects their mind. It gets them to do something that they wouldn't otherwise do, something which is not all that good for them. I'm just going to put those out there for a moment and let you consider the connection. Because we do live in a world where there are all sorts of influences, tons of money being spent to make people angry, outraged, upset, and divided. Right? So we live in a really challenging environment when it comes to this idea of disagreement. And we see that all over the world. I'm going to share some headlines of situations that escalated quickly. This one starts with Florida man, so you know it's going to be good. And it's about a Florida man who expressed his displeasure by throwing hot ramen noodles. You have probably seen these fast food disputes that become violent. Even in my home state of Michigan here, there's a man who assaulted a clerk with a frozen fish. Now, especially this last one teaches students a really important lesson I think every student should know, which is that if you use a frozen fish is dangerous if you use it to hit someone on the head. We see this in our classrooms too. This is not just an issue out there. It happens in our classrooms as well. These are two identical pencils. We're going to call one of them Erica's pencil and the other one Brody's pencil. And even though these pencils are absolutely identical, if Erica thinks that Brody has her pencil or Brody thinks that Erica has his pencil, they will burn the world to the ground in order to rectify this injustice. This is something that's really deep-seated in kids and that has a lot of influences in society trying to exacerbate it, right? This problem of division, of dissension, of argument. So what in the world are we going to do about it? Well, I'm going to explore that by, first of all, thinking about those pencils. If you've got one handy, you can write your answers to this question down. If not, that's fine too. I want you to reflect on this black blob. And again, I promise I'm going somewhere with this. I want you to answer this question. How many US states begin with the letter M or N? Again, if you don't have a pencil, you can count these on your fingers. Play the song for Jeopardy, not the thong for Jeopardy, the song for Jeopardy in your mind. How many states do you think it is? Time's up. This is not really a webinar about counting states, but I am going to share a strategy which highlights an extremely important principle and can help you plant the seed for creating a classroom culture where students can disagree without being disagreeable. And that strategy is called persuasion contagion. Here's how it works. You share a question that has a right answer, but where students are going to disagree about what that right answer is. You let each of them individually come up with what they think the answer might be, and then you take a vote. You see how many people think each answer is correct. Everybody's got to pick something. Then the magic happens, because you encourage them to get together and share their ideas with others. And as you do this, you say, hey, the sign of a smart mind is that it's willing to change if it hears a good reason, and that it's able to share its good reasons with others. Maybe you're starting to see the connection to this idea of disagreeing without being disagreeable. You have students interact with people who have lots of different perspectives and ideas, and you see if together, by keeping that open mind and really being receptive to new information, you can come up with better answers together. So you get back together and you re-vote. You see how many people think one thing, how many people think another. And then if your class was able to keep an open mind and share good ideas and explain things accurately, ideally the truth should spread through the class. If it didn't, you can talk about what that might be, but it's a wonderful strategy for creating this context where students are receptive to new ideas. And that's really at the heart of the matter. We at the Institute think about this as one of these big ideas. This is the sort of idea that can help us solve those big problems. And the idea is really, it boils down to soldier mindset and scout mindset. This is probably the one big idea I'd love for you to walk away from here with. It comes from a great TED Talk by Julia Galef, and it explores this mindset of the soldier, which is something we all fall back into probably too often. The soldier is about defending their beliefs, shooting down the opposition arguments, and winning, coming out as the winner. The scout, on the other hand, is a truth seeker. The scout is open to new perspectives and new information. It doesn't mean the scout's going to believe everything that they hear, but it does mean that they're going to be searching, right? They approach things with an attitude of curiosity, trying to discover the truth. And if we can help our students see that far too often they slip into the soldier mindset and to intentionally step back and step into the scout mindset, we do them and our world a wonderful service. So we're going to explore some awesome ideas about how to do that with our students. But first, I want to think a little bit about how we can do that in adult interactions as well, because these issues do come up in schools, don't they? So some strategies that you can use with your staff, or in fact, just out there in social situations, if you feel that there's a disagreement coming on. You can even use this out there on Facebook Fight Club. You'll find that if you use strategies like this, you're actually much more successful at finding common ground and maybe even changing someone else's mind. The mind you change may even be your own. So one thing I hear all the time when it comes to disagreement is assume positive intent. Now, I think this is a really bad idea, or at least it misses a really important opportunity, because you know what happens when you assume. Instead of just assuming positive intent, we should articulate it, right? If we can approach these potentially divisive or contentious situations by articulating something that we appreciate about the other person and their perspective, we can diffuse that soldier mindset. We can put that other person and ourselves into that scout mindset so that we can work productively together. Here's an example. We've got a cell phone policy debate. This has happened in lots of schools around the country. And we've got two teachers who are diametrically opposed. If both of them start this conversation by expressing something that they do honestly appreciate about the other person's opinion, we can approach that from a situation where both are feeling emotionally like scouts, right? They feel like somebody is really seeing and appreciating the important things that they're bringing to the conversation. So instead of just assuming positive intent, go out of your way to articulate it. Can really get those conversations pointed in the right direction. Another related strategy is steel manning. This is more something that you can do yourself to help build empathy. By the way, that is Peyton Manning, famous quarterback made out of steel. Steel manning is the opposite of straw manning. Straw manning is where you try and say the other person's argument in a really ridiculous, kind of derisive way. Oh, sure, you just want to throw money at the problem. Steel manning is the opposite. Steel manning involves trying to say the other perspective in as strong a way as possible. You find that this really helps you build empathy with the other perspective to see where it might be right or where you might need to refine your thinking. It also helps you be more persuasive, right? If you can recognize some of those points, you can more effectively counteract them by building an appropriate argument yourself. So steel manning is a wonderful process that always puts you in a little bit better position to have a disagreement because you understand the other perspective. In these staff conversations, value mapping can be really valuable as well, right? This is just in being intentional and articulate about the important values that we're holding in this discussion. You might need an example, so let's think about coming up with a school-wide late work policy. Again, teachers are going to bring different perspectives to the table. But if we can highlight the values which underlie their perspective, then as we build that policy, we can make sure to take those values into consideration. And quite often, we can build a policy which really allows us to appreciate all of those and recognize all those different values. If you want to see a late work policy which does take into consideration accountability, fairness, consistency, and learning, we've created a version there that you can peruse. And just think about how this policy was intentional about recognizing and finding some way to honor all of those different values. This one comes from the world of improv. Quite often we want to hear somebody's idea, we say yes, and then we say but. But if we can switch that to say yes and to build on their idea, again, we can create a situation where those staff disagreements are going to be more productively managed. And last, we want to think about discussing ideas, not individuals. We want to evaluate the ideas, not the individuals. In a lot of situations, just for social reasons or reasons of the hierarchy of the organization, some people's ideas might be considered more highly, some might be considered less highly. And if we really want to engage with the ideas, doing things like anonymization, where we don't know who put which idea into the hat, can be really powerful. Speaking of hats, the 6 hats approach, where each person is assigned a role to play. So instead of arguing for their idea, they're expressing that particular perspective. If you're not familiar with the 6 hats approach, again, it's linked there in your hyperdoc. All right, we've shared 5 different ideas about what to do in staff disagreement situations. Robin's opened up a poll there. If you can check all the ones that you thought were important or valuable or helpful to you, that would be spectacular. Just had a disagreement with our staff where we're debating perspectives on a particular issue. And I was able to see some of these in action really helped resolve the issue in a way that everybody felt good about. So, Robin, what are we seeing out there in terms of what people are finding valuable?
You know what? At this point, they're all looking valuable. I'm just going to give it 3 to 5 more seconds as they continue to roll in here pretty quick.
Get those final answers locked in.
All right. Closing it down.
What do we
All
got?
right. So all of these are going to be helpful. At the leaderboard, at the top, articulate positive intent at 74%, followed by ideas, not individuals at 70. And then yes, anding 43, steel manning 30, and values mapping 22.
Excellent. And again, the goal is for you to walk out with a couple ideas that you can find useful, because we will have disagreements of all sorts of different flavors, sometimes even with staff members. And these strategies can be helpful about being intentional, about building that scout mindset. All right. More of the what in the world can we do about this problem of division and dissension? This is the parent and community edition. Raise your hand if you've ever had issues with parents or community members. A lot of you are raising your hand. I can't see it, but I'm sure it's true. All right, I love pre-mortems. This involves trying to identify the cause behind an expected problem. So if you've got a parent coming in and you are feeling like they're going to be upset about a particular thing for a particular reason, once you've got that reason, you can build a structure which tries to preempt it, which tries to get ahead of that problem and diffuse it before it rears its ugly head. So again, some examples might help here. If the parent feels unheard and you think that's really the root cause, you can start the session off by saying, hey, we really want to make sure that we hear your perspective. So we're going to give you 2 minutes of the floor. We can really listen to how you're thinking and feeling. If you think the parent's going to be overly fixated on a single demand, you can walk in with a structure, a 3-option frame, and say, hey, we've got these 3 spots. We need to fill them with 3 different possibilities and think about how each of those might go. So if you can think about that problem and think ahead of it, you can build structures that diffuse. Common ground, super important, super popular one. It's a popular one because it's an important one. Start these potentially contentious discussions off by saying, hey, we both want Junior to be successful. We both want her to thrive. We both want her to make friends. We both want her to be academically flourishing, right? Establish that you're both on the same team working together. It's a wonderful way to, again, instill that scout mindset into the conversation. Mirror and pivot is a similar technique. Here, you're going to listen to their perspective. You're going to articulate it back to them so that they feel seen and heard, and then you're going to launch from there back into your point. So for instance, if you've got a parent who never knows what's going on at school, you can value that verbally. You can say, hey, I get it. It's frustrating when you don't feel informed. That is a valid perspective, and it is frustrating when you don't feel informed. So let's come up with a specific plan together to make sure that you can stay up to date. That mirror and pivot helps those potentially upset or angry members of the community feel that you are listening to them, to actually be listened, right? Because you do value their input. You do value their voice and their perspective. You want them to be heard. But then you can also make sure that you switch it back to kind of the productive direction you're trying to steer it. 3 buckets is more something for you to kind of internally keep an account of, and trying to make sure that people who come in, if they have valid concerns, they do get something in each of those 3 buckets. The 3 buckets are as follows. Some fully acceptable things you can do. They might have some requests that you just say, yes, we can do that. If we can find a couple of those things to do, that really does help them walk out of the conversation feeling like they've had their needs met. Some things might be things to consider. or where you can meet halfway, and then other things might be completely unchangeable. Maybe it's a matter of policy or even of law, right? But thinking about those three buckets and seeing if there's something to put in each of those three can be a valuable way to make that conversation go in a way that both of you know is productive. And again, why before what is a really powerful frame that involves, before you share what your decision is or what the outcome is, make sure you express the reason or the rationale. Again, an example, to keep things fair and consistent for all families, we're going to make sure that we stick to this policy, right? Giving the rationale beforehand, especially if that's a rationale that everybody can kind of get on board with, can make people much more receptive to the decision that is made. So we shared 5 different strategies for working with parents and community members. Robin has successfully opened that poll up. Go ahead and let me know which of those you feel would be valuable to you. I'm sure the answers are roaring in. Robin's going to leave that open for just a little while longer. Remember, you can check all of the ones that you think might be useful to you in helping to diffuse some of those potentially contentious situations. All right, Robin, where are we right now?
All right, so to just save time so we can make sure we get through all of these great strategies, we're just gonna do the top 3. So, and there's 3 at 57%. Common ground, mirror and pivot, and why before what. But all of them have answers that will be helpful, so.
Wonderful, outstanding. I am glad to hear it. And now we're going to get to potentially the one that people are most interested. We're going to finish with the best, the last for the best for the last. That's how you say it. The student edition. Now, sometimes you're just going to have students who have competing interests. Sometimes you're just going to have students who have to make a decision, right? We live in this world where sometimes it seems like people are just trying to get us, even though they just have a different perspective. And when we're in those situations, we just need a quick resolution. We can do some tried and true stuff. Having a great coin of fairness, which you can use if there's 2 students who disagree, you flip it, heads goes one way, tails goes the other. This is a tried and true way that feels really fair, right? You got a 50-50 chance, it didn't go your way. It allows students to just kind of internalize that. If you want to give them just a little ownership over that situation, good old rock, paper, scissors can help to solve those conflicts. I love this one, especially when I'm working with younger students. You can have the turn in the pocket. So you can have somebody who says, hey, I'm going to let you have your way this time, but I'm going to take a turn, a decider's turn, and I'm going to put it in my pocket. And the next time we have a disagreement, no matter how big it is, I can play that turn, and then it's my turn to make a decision. And then the next person can have a turn in their pocket. Great way to just make physical that switching of decisions. Good old voting, very powerful. Love groups of 3 for collaborative work, in part for that reason. So if there are 2 options, we can successfully decide between them just by casting our ballots. This one is silly. It's not for everybody, and it doesn't work if your kids speak in British accents already. But if you do have Erica who's really upset about a tiny little thing, and she's just really emotional about it, having her express her concern to you in a British accent quite often can help her to diffuse it. There's just something about that British accent for those of us who live in America, which puts people in a more cerebral and polite frame of mind. And so this can be used by certain teachers to help diffuse situations in their classrooms. Also super powerful, give them some collaboration sentence stems. And again, linked in the hyperdoc there, just starts of sentences that get those sentences teed up in a way that's going to be productive for those disagreements. These were kind of quick hitters, little strategies. Go ahead and click the ones that you like or that you might like to use there. I love, Robin, the idea of just sharing the top 1 or 2 or 3, because we only have 6 minutes left. We can do it, but we want to get to those last strategies. So just a couple seconds.
Everybody, 5 more seconds. Sorry, Ben.
Hey, no problem. No problem at all. Get those votes in, and then let's see what we've got.
All right, let's go with the top 2. Flip for it at 57% and democracy in action coming in second, but all of them over 30%.
Wonderful. And these last 5 minutes are going to be strategies that build scout mindset. I love the zoom strategy where you take a picture connected to your content and zoom way in. And then you challenge students to guess what it is. It could be lots of things at this point. And as you zoom out, students get more information and you encourage them on the basis of this new information to change their mind. And that's the essence of Scout Mindset. This is a super low stakes way to get students to practice changing their minds as they get new information about what these roots are. Maybe you thought it was River Delta, but those are roots there. Reveal is very similar. Here you just take that picture and you cover it up with squares. And again, as they get new information, they can change their minds about what this crab might be. Again, super low stakes. If you want to raise the stakes just a little bit, the flex your thinking strategy, where you share an opinion question and you have students physically stake out a position from total agreement to total disagreement. And then you introduce new perspectives or new facts, and you see if those facts change their position at all. It's a way to make physical and visible so that you can see if students are keeping an open mind and are willing to change their opinion, especially if they get a good reason. That steel manning strategy that we used with the staff is valuable for students as well. I love to use some of these AI chatbots to have students debate an issue. And then once they've seen how the chatbot debates, we have them flip it around and see if they can argue the other side of the issue once they've had that modeled for them. Again, with all these strategies, you can see them keeping that scout mindset, keeping that open mind. And then last but not least, so important to let kids articulate their perspectives to the world. We do want them to stand up for the things that they believe in a persuasive and respectful way. And so giving them opportunities to share that out to the world. Maybe they're making a PSA, putting it on YouTube. Maybe they're screencastifying their way through a persuasive presentation. I'm a huge fan of podcasts because kids don't have to worry about the visuals and they can have some supports right there. But it gives them an opportunity to share their voice, their opinion, and their perspective with the world. Great practice at being persuasive and sharing good ideas in a respectful way. So we hit 5 important strategies there, 5 strategies I love. Persuasion, contagion from the very beginning, and then the 4 we just discussed. Robin's got that poll open. She's going to leave it open. I'm super curious which of those will drift toward the top. What do people think and feel about these strategies? Again, I know this is a quick hit. If you do want to take a deeper dive into this topic, we'd love to connect with you and with your school. Such important stuff. All right, Robbie D, what are we seeing?
All right, so top 2, flex your thinking at 60%. Followed closely by Zoom Reveal at 56%.
Wonderful, wonderful. And again, if you walk out of here with a couple ideas that you can try with your students and in your school, that is a win. The big deal here is trying to use this kind of strategy with staff, with community, with students to build a culture where we are scouts, where we approach disagreements by keeping an open mind and trying to find the truth together. There's a link to that Scout Mindset graphic in your HyperDoc if you'd like to use that. Again, if you want to take a deeper dive to this in Muppet form or not, just fire me an email. You can also express interest in a quick survey that's going to pop up as soon as we close out here. And as a closing, I would just like to thank you, first of all, for your time today, for your attention to this really important topic, and above all, for everything you do to improve the lives and the learning of your students. Have an absolutely wonderful day.